All right, guys. So at this point, you have done your do now, and if you're an AP, you have knocked out that video check. We're gonna go ahead and jump in and do some notes here, or a lecture rather. And um, yeah, so let me flip back to OneNote here. Okay, so I want to just explain a couple things. Right here, you guys can see where the hook is. That'll help us kind of have some context for what we're going to be talking about today. So first and foremost, you guys can see here when the economy is struggling. So we've talked about this business cycle when I was still in school. We talked about GDP, that we measure GDP, how it goes up and down over time. So here you can see in this little kind of makeshift graph that when the economy is healthy, when the economy is good, um, we're good, right? We have jobs, we're working, we're making money, etc. But then, something is going to happen at some point. For example, in 2008, the housing bubble or the housing crash caused the recession. In 2020, it was COVID that caused the recession. In 1929, it was stock market and other factors. Either way, there's always going to be something that causes this crash. So the question is going to be, what can the government do to prevent this from continuing to fall, right? How do we prevent the economy from going into a free fall? Instead, right the ship, so to speak, and make it so that our economy is good. So we can see examples of this in 2008, for example. When Obama was president, we had what was called the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And you can see here this little sign and these bulldozers and stuff. It's because this act, this law, literally spent government money to put Americans back to work, right? And so the theory is, hey, if we spend money, we're building, in this case, new bridges or new roads. That's going to put people to work. It's going to put money in their pockets, and that's going to help improve the economy. Okay, in 2020, with the COVID recession, you can see all sorts of stuff that they spent money on, right? They gave support to small businesses. Probably most famously, we can see these stimulus payments that were used, that a lot of your families probably received. I know I received stimulus money myself. Oh, there we go. Um, and then just other things like that that helped to improve, in theory, improve the economy and right that ship. So that's what we're going to be looking at today because we are going to be talking about how the New Deal, which is FDR's government programs, help to make the economy better. So let me flip over to the notes here. And by the way, actually, before I do that, when you guys scroll down, you'll see your notes are fully filled in for today. So this is literally really just me talking through some of these things that you guys have an understanding of what this is. All right, so let me open these up. You slide. Ooh, slideshow. All right, so we'll go from the do now there and see if I can. There we go. Okay, so um, guys, as we learned last class, this Great Depression, it resulted in some big issues with people. In particular, under President Hoover's presidency, people were not doing very well. You can see here this little kid sitting in a Hooverville, as this was called. Um, Hard times still Hoover over us. Hoover's Poor Farm Fund. They called, like we said, these kind of makeshift encampments Hoovervilles. People even called newspapers Hoover blankets. So Hoover was largely blamed for this depression. Might not necessarily should pin all of the blame on him, but we certainly can say that he did not help to make it a better situation. So, what's going to happen is there's going to be this push for a New Deal under FDR, um, and who's this new president who's going to come take over and hopefully make things better. So, a couple things about FDR. Let's see if I can click through this here. So first of all, he is related to Theodore Roosevelt, the other Roosevelt that we already talked about. Kind of weird, but he's married to a lady named Eleanor Roosevelt, who's actually Theodore's niece. Back then, that was a little bit more normal. Um, he served as an instrumental, and she served as an instrumental aide to his presidency. So she kind of is like at the forefront of being a first lady who actually takes an active role in presidential politics. Interesting here, he's also afflicted by polio, which is a disease that we don't really have in our society anymore, but used to be fairly common. And long story short, he was wheelchair bound. He could not use his lower body. And so, one thing that is really worth noting about FDR is his fireside chats, right? This is the way that he is, once he's elected, going to really be able to get out and connect with the American public. There are these radio addresses that are designed to show, hey, I'm willing to sit down with you guys and talk and tell you about what's happening and not only help you guys understand what's happening, but talk you through it and make sure that you feel good and feel comfortable. So fireside chats, really important. Um, and one other thing to note about FDR is we're going to see a big expansion of the government under FDR. And actually, I want to pop out of the slideshow here for a second and kind of explain that a little bit. Let's see. So essentially, what we have is in prior to 1929, right? We have this very laissez-faire system where the government is hands off. We don't really regulate much, and this is why Hoover is going to really be blamed for this depression. Businesses can kind of get away with doing whatever they want. They can, sell things at kind of whatever prices they want. And then more importantly, people can make decisions based on greed rather than rationality. And so that's why so many people are involved in the stock market. So I put here the example of buying stocks that they can't afford, taking out loans to get stocks. That's all, not good ideas. So then the Great Depression is going to start. What we'll see is a shift after 1932 where, hey, let's kind of move away from this laissez-faire, this hands-off, unregulated government. Let's have an economy that is regulated, a government that is involved, right? So companies and businesses, they have to follow the rules and regulations of the government. People have to follow the rules and regulations as well. And so a simple example of this is concepts like buying on margin, where you take out a loan to pay for stocks. That's not any longer legal. And that's because the government says, hey, you can't do that, right? So simple differences by the time of this, the start of this depression. And so if I can get these notes back up, that's what we mean when we talk about there's a massive expansion of the government under FDR because quite literally the government is doing more to regulate the economy. Okay, so here we can see FDR and again, he had polio, so he's wheelchair bound, can't really move around. And if I can move this over, there's Eleanor, his wife, who he is also related to. Kind of weird. And right there is FDR giving a fireside chat, those famous radio addresses. All right, so this New Deal, I'm going to kind of speed through this, not necessarily talk about every single aspect, but basically the New Deal is discussed with the 3 R's. So 3 R's, one of which relief, right? We want to create programs to relieve people from poverty, right? So most importantly, we got a lot of people, 25% who are unemployed. Let's provide jobs. Let's make sure that they can have employment. Recovery, we're going to create laws that are going to help businesses recover and therefore those businesses be able to hire people. And then lastly, reform, and probably most importantly, we need to fix the businesses so that they can't continue taking advantage of people and that they can't make bad decisions anymore. All right. So let's talk about some of these examples of these New Deal programs. So probably the best example of reform is this, what's called the bank holiday. So right away, as soon as FDR is elected president, March 6th through 12th, they're literally going to close down all of the banks in the country. right? They're going to say, you know what? He's going to deliver this fireside address, and he's going to say, we are no longer going to let you take money out of banks. And quite literally, if you can't take money out of banks, you can't use banks anymore, then that's going to help rebuild confidence, right? People can't get their money out, which means banks can't fail. Another example of reform is the repeal of prohibition, where they are literally going to say, you know what, what's one way we can get people happy again? Let's let them drink again, and let's let them spend money on alcohol sales. That's going to help perhaps raise revenues and help businesses out. Eventually, that's going to be followed by the 21st Amendment. All right, so some other important New Deal programs. We have reform the Emergency Banking Relief Act. That's what creates this bank holiday. The Glass-Steagall Act increases regulation of banks, and that is going to result in what's called the FDIC. So this is a really good example of a law that's created to say, all right, let's make it so that banks in the future can't have the same problems that they had during the Great Depression. So the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Company, basically says that even if there's bank runs and the bank runs out of your money, then the federal government is insuring that bank, and the government will eventually give you your money back, even if that bank closes. So pretty cool. Don't ever go put your money in a bank that doesn't say FDIC insured. Another good example of for recovery here, National Recovery Administration literally has it in the words, NRA, to enforce fair standards in the workplace. So this is things like minimum wage, right? Making sure that people can make a decent living, that they're not being overworked. This is eventually going to be declared unconstitutional, though, because businesses are going to fight back after the Great Depression. And same thing for farmers, Agricultural Adjustment Administration. It's going to protect farmers from price drops, etc. Again, going to be declared unconstitutional as well. What we can see here, though, is a lot of these New Deal programs, we can see all the letters. They're also known as the alphabet soup because of all the acronyms that comes with them. All right, so I'm going to speed through a couple last New Deal programs here and just show you guys some stuff here. Long story short, a lot of these New Deal programs, what they are doing is they are putting people to work in public projects, right? So things like the Public Works Administration, when you see that Public Works, hey, let's create public works projects like bridges and roads. It's going to create jobs, it's going to put people to work. Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, it's going to put people into work in conservation tasks. This is actually what is responsible for helping build Red Rocks Amphitheater here in Colorado. The Tennessee Valley Authority, public works projects, build dams and roads throughout this really poor and hard-hit region in Tennessee. You can see it over here, all these different dams and bridges that were built. That puts thousands of people to work. Securities and Exchange Commission regulates the stock market, makes sure that people can't buy on margin anymore. Works Progress, right? Public works, again, putting people to work, building bridges and roads. And then probably most importantly in his New Deal is what's called the Social Security Administration. It's basically going to say, hey, you know what group is really hit hard by this Great Depression is elderly people. Let's make it so that elderly people can not only get money, but that they can also get retirement benefits and things like that. And it's literally just money that is given to you once you don't work any longer. And this basically sets a standard that once you turn 65, you can stop working and still contribute to the economy because you're getting literally checks from the government. All right, so that is our New Deal in a nutshell. Keep working through your Pear Deck and answering the questions as you go. Let me know what questions you have.